Welcome, Iliana. Thank you so much for coming back to the Beyond Barriers podcast. We love having individuals like yourself who we get to know and who we are privileged to call friend. But we wanted to bring you back because, you in your own right have been such a successful individual, and one of those examples for Latinas to see and, inspire them to want to be more and see that you've gone through all of these challenges in your career and have had an amazing journey. But we know that the last conversation we had with you, your journey has evolved even more since then. And, I don't want to release the bag before you or steal your thunder, but you've had some significant challenges and we've been there with you, alongside you, supporting you. But can you talk a little bit about, since the last conversation we had with you, how your journey has evolved and, a few pivots and things like that in there for you?
Absolutely. Yes. And let me start by saying thank you so much for inviting me back, Monica, and congratulations obviously to you and the whole team at Beyond Barriers for leading a fantastic mission to help women advance in their careers and go farther and faster together. So kudos to you for that. I'm really happy to be here. And absolutely, a lot of things have changed, right, in my journey since we last spoke. As you know, I'm a Latina Trailblazer in tech. I've been in the high-tech industry for many, many years, 25 plus years. I have been leading teams of engineers, specifically in the solution engineering function, which is basically the engineers that help the sales reps position and sell the products and the solutions for software companies, right? And in the past 2 to 3 years, I think I have pivoted greatly from what I was doing, right? What I have been mostly in corporate America, so software companies, enterprise, large enterprise, but also small startups, the ones that went IPO, the ones that pivoted and went belly up, right? Whole set of experiences. But there were two main pivots, right? So one is from a career perspective. I decided to take and leverage all the experience and knowledge I had from tech and my career as an individual contributor, as a frontline manager, as a level 2 leader, as a leader of leaders and building teams, and really take that on my own and start my own company, my own consulting company, where we strive to actually provide startup services for companies that are founded by Latinx women and underrepresented minorities. So we help them through their entrepreneurial journeys to accelerate those paths, as well as to accelerate their career journeys too. And the other thing I do is, of course, coaching and mentoring is a passion of mine. So I'm doing and dedicated to doing executive and career coaching for women, specifically in the high-tech industry and other industries as well. So that's one of the biggest pivots, right? Career-wise. On the personal side, of course, as you are familiar with, so I had to face some challenges while I was at my last corporate role, which was at a company called Salesforce, which is one of the largest software companies in the world. And I was facing a medical challenge. So I'm going to get a little bit personal here, maybe even a little bit emotional, right? So I was diagnosed with having a brain tumor about a year and a half. It's going to be almost 2 years ago. And that came from left field, of course, as we know. And life is about surprises, right? That's what I would say. It was a surprise, but my engineering mindset kicked in pretty quickly. So I was like, okay, so I have to face this. And what do we do about it, right? Instead of having some sort of negative perspective about it or the typical victim mentality. Why me? Why is this happening to me, right? So I decided that I needed to be educated about my situation. I needed to basically make the unknown known to me, right? What is it that I had? What was my diagnosis? What were the options? And then I had to take the risk, right? I had to take a risk about my treatment. So long story short, I'm doing great. I had to take the risk and actually my treatment was basically a surgery, a big major brain surgery. And of course, very scary thing. But I said, well, there's no other treatment. There's no other option. Let's just do it and hope for the best and educate myself on what the possible outcomes are. And in doing so, remain the fear component of it, right? And then, of course, I had to rely on my experience being resilient throughout my career, my personal life. Earlier in my life, as you know, I took risks from moving from countries, right? Moving from Mexico City, where I'm originally from, to live in the UK, to do my master's degree, to going back to Mexico, and then moving to the US to start a different corporate career, a new job without knowing anyone, right? So life is full of those challenges and taking risks and being resilient and building relationships that can support you through all of that. And I have to say thank you so much, because you are correct. You worked with me through that tough journey also as well recently, and I appreciate that.
No, of course. And all I can say is wow, right? And hearing you, share this again and share it in such a public forum, which, by all means, your vulnerability is going to help so many of our listeners learn from that and be able to dig deep and be motivated. But one of the things that you mentioned that, I wanted to talk a little bit about was, you shared how you managed to keep your fears at bay by educating yourself. And that engineering mind, came to, it came forefront for you. And really you started saying, okay, let me educate myself about this. And so despite the uncertainties, you were able to make those kinds of decisions. Can you talk a little bit about, break that down? Like, how did you first go about saying, okay, I don't know anything about this. How did you learn about it? What were the steps that you took that, somebody else could repeat?
Yes, no, great question, Monica. And I think I have to say it's almost like a repeatable process for me, not just for my health situation or health incident, but also in my career in general, right? So the first thing was I had to give time and grace to myself, right? Because I had to absorb and then give myself the grace to experience it and experience the fear in the moment, right? And then after that, which it's what I call the shocking moment, then really try to process it. And the first thing for me was, okay, let's really understand this and the impact of this in my life, right? Let's really understand the pros and cons. Of course, the cons were much bigger than the pros at that time.
Right.
And let's understand also the what if scenarios, right? Of the all possible outcomes that this could bring into my life. Once I identified that, I had to educate myself, right? In all those possible scenarios. I had to build relationships. I can tell you how many people I talked to, both in my personal, professional networks, and even new networks I had to build. I had to relate to my health, of course, situation. I had to build relationships with neurosurgeons, right? Neuro-ophthalmologists, kind of like the kind of people that I had never thought I was going to be talking to ever. So suddenly I have a network there. That's pretty good. So if anybody in our audience ever needs that, I'm happy to talk to you about that. And then really I had to convert all the unknown from anything from my tumor to the neurosurgeon community to the hospitals, and I had to make them known to me, right? I had to know the pros and cons of each of them. I had to put together the scenarios of what could happen, if what best possible outcome, worst possible outcome, how could I minimize the risk of those, and then based on all that, educate myself and make the best possible decision for myself, my family, and my communities, right? How was this all going to impact everything? And I think that's what really makes it a little bit more manageable. Once you put a name to the fear, which by the way, fun fact, I did name my tumor. I call it kiwi nut because if you saw the image, it literally looked like a kiwi bird. So a nut because it was the size of a nut. So it was a kiwi nut. So once I named it, which my neurosurgeon thought it was hilarious, right? I was more able to visualize it and know that, hey, I'm going to remove this. I'm going to deal with this. This is the way I'm going to deal with it. And I'm going to prepare in the best possible way for all the possible outcomes.
Wow, that's so inspirational and so insightful. But I think exactly what you shared is the mechanics of breaking it down into, solving the problem the way you know how made it known to you, right? It was something tangible that you're like, okay, I'm going to take this and educate myself. But I think it probably also helped your family a ton too, because you were educating them in the process as well. So I think that was phenomenal. And I can see how you could apply that to any challenge that you were talking about.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. And we are so thrilled. I mean, we were, of course, watching you, and I was always so like emotional to just see the positivity, because I know that and I think it's probably because part of this process where you gave yourself the grace to kind of sit with it and the emotion, but around all of us, you were positive. You were like, I got this, and I'm gonna take this kiwi nut and tell it to go fly away. But it was, I would say the other part of your resilience was the optimistic and the emotion and the almost where you were consoling some of us, like, it's okay, I'm going to be okay. I just, and that is, I find so admirable. But I want to, shift gears a little bit because
Mhm.
you did go back to work and you had
Yeah.
an amazing support team at work, and your team, I remember people on your team were the one handling all kinds of communications and keeping everybody updated so that you weren't taxed with that.
Mhm.
But you did go back to work, but then after that, you did decide to pivot and go on your
Mhm.
own. Did this play some into it, or like what helped you gain the clarity that you wanted to now pivot?
Yeah. So definitely help give the clarity, right? I mean, when you're faced with situations like that, one thing is you question what you're doing, right? Am I
Yes.
in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? Am I being happy? Am I being fulfilled? Right. So I think at that moment when I decided to get back to work, I knew I loved doing what I was doing. I loved doing my work, loved my team, had a great network of support there. And I wanted to honestly give back to them, right? I was like, I owe them this, right? It's like, I want to do it. And I went back there. But at the same time, of course, we were facing some challenges and some changes in the company. Things were changing in the marketplace as well. So the opportunity came about as a challenge as well, right? So the company was pivoting. They changed. My team was going to face some changes. Myself, I was going to face some changes. And at that point, I had to make a decision, right? I was going to say, well, either I continue in the corporate life, which will require some adjustments and changes to myself, my career here, or I can take this as an opportunity to actually go and do something new. At that point, what I realized is that in my career planning, and you know how we're good, right, at setting up objectives and
Yes.
goals, and I do actually have even an acronym for that for myself, which is called DARA. I call it DARA, which
Uh-huh.
is DARA. D stands
Uh-huh.
for defining smart goals, right? They have to be specific, measurable. We all know those characteristics. The A stands for adjusting those goals, right? Because as you start working towards those goals, sometimes they have to be adjusted, right? Whether the
Yeah.
time gets adjusted, the goal, the mission. The R stands for recognizing the progress towards those goals, right? Because I think that's one of the things that can keep fueling yourself, propelling you forward, not just waiting for the big milestones to be accomplished, but recognizing the progress you're making towards
Yeah.
that. And the final A for me was, and especially when you go through tough times, is having an accountability partner, making sure that you stay the course and have someone that you can bounce ideas from or off, and then someone who can keep you on track, right? Who can keep you accountable for those things that you're going to do for your own benefit and for the benefit of others, right? For the
Right.
impact you want to create. So with that said, of course, my goals changed a bit. I had more clarity about what I wanted to do. I wanted to impact or create impact at a larger scale. I knew I wanted to give back to a very specific community. So Latinos, Latinx founders, women in high tech and professional environments. And I knew I had the tools to do it and the experience to do it. So I had always planned to at some point become an independent consultant. So at the time I decided, well, maybe this is the right time, right? We're having changes in the company. I don't want to stay here for the changes, and let's go and start our own company. So that's how I pivoted to that, because I saw it as an opportunity, even though it was a challenge as well, right? Living in a
Yes.
company that, wow, I've been here 8 years and now I have to leave. So could easily be a negative thing, but I decided to frame it differently and see it as an opportunity to actually accelerate my path towards getting to that, building my company, providing consulting services, and having potentially a larger impact in the communities that I serve.
That's so powerful how you look, you mentioned just shifting and turning the obstacle into the opportunity, right? And really, taking off the jade colored glasses and putting on the rose colored glasses and say, how can I make this work in my benefit? And, and I can attest to the fact that you'd always been thinking about, making the pivot and going off on your own, because even when you came to Beyond Barriers, 3 years ago, and you were, working on your coaching certification and things like that, you already had this in mind. So you had been planning a long time before. It wasn't just kind of on a whim. Can you talk a little bit about, you had been preparing all along, and then that opportunity came and it was like, I need to make a decision now. There's a short window. What was your thought process? And I'm asking you this because you are that engineer, you are that person who like loves processes and frameworks. What did you immediately, like, what was your first thought of like, here's the opportunity? When you recognized it, what was your next step?
Yeah, so yes, first of all was creating the right mindset, right? Reframing it as an opportunity. Then really understanding what that potential opportunity would mean to me, right? To me and to my family and to my communities, right? what could it bring in terms of value to my life, to my career, and what I could in turn return as value to those communities and those people, right? So those were some of the initial steps. Then it was about setting up a framework, right, and a time frame too. It was about, well, where am I in my life, in my personal life, right? I have 2 daughters, so full disclosure here, I have 2 daughters, 18 and 15. My oldest just went to college, so 3 weeks ago we got her settled at UCLA, very happy about that, and my youngest started high school. So I realized that time-wise, I was going to be quite busy, right? And I'm talking about this past summer. So I wanted to give myself the time to actually devote to my family through those transitions, because those were going to be important milestones in my personal life. And having the opportunity to then pivot to do something on my own, I also had the flexibility, which was an added benefit to that transition, right? So that's what I did. But then it was about, okay, now how can I structure this, right? I know I want to pivot and do my consulting services, my startup advising. I'm going to reach out to my network. That was one of the first things I did. So I started really working my network very intentionally, connecting with the people that I thought could actually help guide me through this transition, people who had done this before, role models in the industry, people that were already in the organizations that I wanted to work with or work for or work with and create partnerships. So I invested a lot of time and effort and energy in reaching out to my network, but being very intentional about the goals I wanted to do with each of them. Once I had that, I had a structure, right? I had more clarity in terms of, okay, this is how I want to do it. This is the people I'm going to do it with. And then it became another challenge, because then it was like, okay, now basically I'm going from a corporate life to being myself. And I am actually the product that will have to be offered as part of the services, right? And that's a completely different mindset than when you're in corporate life, you're part of a big structure, right? And you have the career ladder, the corporate ladder, but now you're the product. So you had to figure out how to basically package yourself as the product and the services you can provide. So it was another process. Again, I reached out to my network, I educated myself on how this could be done. And then it was a matter of trial and error, right? Don't try to be perfect, because you're not going to get it right the first time around. Be open to feedback, right? So I put things out there, some services that didn't make sense at the beginning. I thought, oh my God, this could be great, and didn't work out. I had to get the feedback, adjust again, be open to reaching out and to say, I need help with this, right? This is some areas were unknown to me, so I had to be humble, be transparent with people and say, I need your help. I'm open to feedback, and as well as I've been a mentor for a long time, but I have my own mentors. So reaching out to my mentors, to my sponsors, that's been critical. And so now I'm in a state where I think I have more clarity about what I want to do. Obviously, do I have it perfectly 100%? No. It's an ongoing journey, but I definitely think that that process helped me put together the structure, both in terms of products, services I want to do, demographics, target audiences I want to work with, and also legal structures as well that I was not familiar with, to create my own company and all that stuff, and then go from there. So again, it's been a journey, and it's a lot about being humble, educating yourself, realizing that you don't know everything and you're not going to get it right the first time around. You're not going to be perfect, but you can strive to be as good as possible, and reaching out to my network for support and my communities.
Wow, Iliana, I'm so glad I asked you that question, and I'm so thankful how you shared that. And it makes me proud to hear you talking about how all of these things that, we coach to in Beyond Barriers, of like, the 5 C's of leveraging your community and being, the idea of conviction of learning, right? How do you become that future ready leader and start anticipating the things that you need to do? And you are showing, the actual examples of how you were doing that in real time. I think it's phenomenal. And then of course your commitment of, to yourself and your family and what you were doing, but really just saying, I'm going to take some of this time to focus on family. It's milestone moments that I want to be there for, and I have flexibility. But then saying, okay, now, I need to execute on what it is I'm trying to make happen. And so you laid it out so perfectly, and it's so amazing to see all of these pieces. But the one thing that I know, and you touched on it a little bit, was, what were there any moments where you had that self-doubt or that fleeting moment of like, oh my goodness, what did I do? Or did I make the right decision? Did you ever have any of those moments? Or, and if you didn't, what do you think helped you, prepare to not, to keep those fears at bay?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question, Monica, because I did have those moments, and I think we all have them. If we didn't have them, we would not be humans, right?
Yes.
And that's the only way, by the way, to grow, right? You have those
Mhm.
self-limiting beliefs in many cases, and it's really just a moment of being in a place that makes you feel uncomfortable. But
Mhm.
we need to realize that those moments when we feel really uncomfortable, it's the biggest opportunities for us to grow, right? Personally and also professionally. I
Mhm.
think some of the things that helped me were realizing that one, I'm seeing this as an opportunity. And as
Mhm.
such, it's not going to be all cooked and digested for me because an
Yeah.
opportunity is a new thing, right?
Mhm.
Um, it's also an opportunity where I can basically leverage my preparation, my experience, my networks to come to help me out, right? So
Mhm.
bring my team of supporters, my cheerleaders, help me get there. As I said, you're not going to get it perfect the first time around, but if you are there and you don't have to go at it alone, realize that, right?
Mhm.
And the other thing is, think about it, a self-limiting belief. Is it really about you're limiting yourself because you're thinking, I don't belong here, I'm not ready for this? Or is it the situation? And I think there's a big difference, right? Between, is the situation limiting yourself, right? In my
Mhm.
case, well, the situation is, I want to start this new company. What are the limitations? Well, none, because it doesn't exist today. So I have no
Right.
limits,
Uh-huh.
right? The dream can be as big as I want it to be. So it was more on my side. It was more my personal limits in the sense that, well, I've never done this before on my own, establishing my own
Mhm.
company. And in that sense, it was reminding myself that, you've dealt with a lot more tougher challenges, right? Both in
Mhm.
corporate life, when you had
Mhm.
to face in the past a lot of biases and microaggressions and things like those. I've been the only Latina trailblazer in tech for a long time. I was one of only 5 women when I was studying engineering back in Mexico City. I was
Yeah.
the only woman in my team when I came to the US in engineering, right? I even got a customer who told me, what are you doing here? I don't even know that Mexico had female engineers. Can you study that? to really be resilient about all those
Mhm.
things. So it was reminding myself that, you got this. I mean,
Mhm.
yes, you don't know everything, but you can go through it, right? You just need to prepare yourself. You need to reach out and lean in, and you will be able to do it, right? Reminding myself of that awesomeness that we all have, because we all have
Yes.
unique stories and we all have successes. So in a
Mhm.
way, it was actually funny that you asked, because one time I was really feeling like, oh my gosh, I really can't do this. I don't know where to start, this and that. And how am I going to get through this? And my husband came and he said, you always coach people and mentor people, and you talk to them about your I am awesome list, right? Where's your list? And I'm like, oh, you're right. So I took it out, which is in my phone. And
Uh-huh.
my I am awesome list is like all the successes or the moments where I have felt very proud of myself. And it was kind of like an immediate boost, right, of
Mhm.
self-confidence. So
Yes.
that was fantastic. And it was like, you're right. I have all this, I can certainly deal with this other stuff, right? So I
Mhm.
guess that's just an example, right? That has worked for me. And the other thing I want to mention, Monica, is something you said earlier today,
Mhm.
that I've been positive, or most of the time I'm always positive, or try to be as positive as possible. It's not to
Uh-huh.
say that I don't get the negative track sometimes. I do give myself the grace to be negative or bent at times.
Uh-huh.
But I think for the most part, remaining positive, especially when you're facing tough situations, is super important, because that is one of the ways that it's going to keep you in that mind frame of growth, learning, and taking challenges, turning them into opportunities, moving things that are uncertain and fearful to you, moving them into something known and manageable, moving
Mhm.
something that's been a failure, double quote, failure in the past or a setback, and transforming that into a learning experience, or seeing it more as a learning experience. So remaining positive is something that's also paramount and has been really one of the common threads in my life, both personally and professionally as well.
No, and I can attest to that. I've witnessed all of these things, and I think, what you talked about, the whole allowing yourself the grace to be, negative, or the emotion of feeling bent, or even allowing the fear to like sit in it for a bit, is important, right? Because you can't ignore them or abandon them, or like, say they're not there. They are there, but then how do you make sure that you keep them contained? And I think everything that you shared and some of the techniques and the habits and the hacks of the I am awesome list. And I love that your husband even knew that you had an I am awesome list to cause you to pull it out. But it was that list that, anchors those feelings of, just happiness and proud and the pride that you have when you read it. And it is that reminder of like, yeah, I have done this and I can do this, right? I can continue to do hard things. I think that is so amazing. I wanted to shift gears and talk a little bit about, finding that purpose. Now you're following this, your dream of like doing work that is purposeful, and your work has always been, purposeful, but there's a difference between being that successful and in a job and loving your job, but also the fulfillment piece, right? And you've always been someone who I've known, even with your day job, you had 3 or 4 other jobs with, boards that you sit on, or advisory roles or leadership roles with organizations that were focused on Latinx and, Latino, Latinas, etc. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing now and what, why it's so important? Like, what are you helping solve? And what do you think right now are some of the challenges that you're helping these organizations, these Latino owned startups?
Yeah, good question, Monica, because I think one, first of all, I have to say it comes with age a little bit, right? Finding your purpose and the things that really fulfill you. So, but it's always been there in a way. I think now, and with experiences obviously in my life, I have realized that it's really important to be happy and to enjoy and feel fulfilled, right? If you don't have those, you're not going to enjoy living, right? And we have one life and one life to live. So we have to feel fulfilled and happy about it. So with that said, for me, it was always about my core values and how can I apply those into a mission, right? So my values, my personal values are many, but 3 key ones that have permeated into my professional life pretty directly are growth, impact, and recognition, right? So most of my decisions are based on those 3 values. So am I growing? Am I helping others grow? Am I creating impact, positive impact in the world, in my communities? And am I enabling and empowering others to create impact as well? And recognition. Am I being recognized? Well, we all like being recognized, right? We all like that pat in the back. But more importantly, am I recognizing others, right, for what they are doing, right? Whether that's progress, whether that's facing a challenging situation, whether that's my daughters not using their phone all the time in a day, right? All the many hours. So whatever that is, right? Those values drive my decision-making and the things that I'm close to. So with that said, of course, I saw the opportunity in this environment that we're living in, this tough microeconomic environment, right? And being so close to tech here in Silicon Valley, I thought, you know what? I've always been an advocate and a sponsor of Latino professionals, right? Latinx professionals and women professionals. And the startup community is something that I've always been close to. I have volunteered, to your point, what you said before, have volunteered with many organizations before, including accelerators that help Latin founded companies, right? And I said, maybe the impact I can do now is through those vehicles to help this community that is, one, underrepresented in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, a community that it's been really hard to get resources for, and the percentages are pretty low, and we don't want to say that because we don't want to put the negative context here, but it's really hard to get investments, right, for Latin-founded startups. Yes. And third, it's really hard for a lot of these founders who have the grit and the energy and the fantastic ideas to have the access to the networks and the communities that can support them. So for me, it was like a trifecta. It's like, oh my gosh, I can help them, those areas. And I have the added benefit of having a cultural alignment, the language alignment, and possibly some similar experiences that they have gone through. Right. So for me, that's what this opportunity represented, an opportunity to create larger impact with a specific community. I'm very interested in helping to solve a real problem that we have. And if I had to be more specific, Monica, within this entrepreneurial ecosystem, and when you think about these startup founders, and this is where I can extend it to not just Latin founders, but women and in general, right? A lot of them struggle with, of course, fundraising, number one issue, but also with what is their value proposition? What is the story they are going to go and tell the investors that they want to get money from, right? And many of them struggle because while they have in their mind really clear, oh, this is a product, this is a service, they don't know how to put it together in a way that makes an emotional connection, that it's relevant to the time, and that has some alignment with those audiences that they are addressing.
Yes.
So for me, that's what I've been doing my entire corporate life, right? I've been putting together ideas and storytelling to sell things to customers, right? So that's experience that I could leverage and bringing into this entrepreneurial ecosystem today.
That's phenomenal. And yes, the idea of being able to identify that unique value proposition and articulate that to get buy-in from others is crucial. And if you don't have clarity on what that unique value proposition is, then how are you going to get where you want to go, right? And so I love that you're doing that and you're leveraging your strength and being able to do that. And so kudos to you. I'm so excited to be here with you, and Beyond Barriers is thrilled and privileged, to call you a friend and a colleague, and know that we're going to be here with you side by side, lifting each other up as we go. So you and I could talk forever. I feel
Yes.
like, with the cafecito, and just keep going. But we do have to close it up. So I want to move on to kind of a fun part of the podcast of closing it out, of just asking you our flash lightning round questions, and really getting to know you a little bit more, because we got to know you well and some of the mindset things that you embrace. But let's talk a little bit more tactical of, where others can maybe kind of pick up and embrace some of these habits that you have. What is a book that has greatly influenced you?
Oh my gosh, so many of them, but one specifically for my career. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. You may have heard of it. It's by Ben Horowitz, which is who is one of the co-founders of Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, a VC fund here in the Bay Area. And I love it because it gives you an inside look at the decisions and struggles and loneliness that CEOs and leaders have to face before they can go on and build fantastic organizations.
I love that. And that's such an insightful book. It's one of my favorites. And every time I read it, I pick up something new, or it helps you, make those hard decisions, right? Understanding, like, when you decide, you divide, and there's always going to be the naysayers. And so it's like, well, it's inevitable, so don't let them bring it down.
Yes.
I love it. What is your favorite inspiring quote or saying?
Two quotes that I have lived by pretty much since I heard them. One is by Maya Angelou, who's a great activist and women supporter in her time. She said that people will forget a lot of things you do or you did, and a lot of things you said, but they will never forget the way that you made them feel. So always mindful of that when you're building relationships. How are you making people feel? Because they will remember that. And the other one is by Eleanor Roosevelt. She used to say that you can often change your circumstances by changing your attitude. Remember, we talked a lot about reframing and having a positive attitude. So I love that. And she said that.
No, definitely. And I could see how that impacted you of constantly, shifting that mindset and shifting the attitude, right? Changing state, right? Of I'm in a fearful state, or that, scarcity mindset, and I'm going to flip it around and, and reframe it. I love that. What is one word or moniker that you would use to describe yourself?
I know we work a lot on this when I was working with you guys. But if I had to choose one moniker and one word, so the one word I think would be impact. I'm always pursuing impact and trying to create impact for others, positive impact for others, right? And for myself. And the moniker, I would have to say, Latina Trailblazer in tech. So I'm a committed Latina Trailblazer in tech.
Latina Trailblazer, you are always blazing trails. I love it. What is one change, a habit, a behavior, an action that you implemented and it made your life better?
So that's a tough one because I've made a lot of them. But I think sometime someone told me that Winston Churchill actually said something that goes something like this: don't take no for an answer, right? And I think that is something that you need to make a habit, right? Because there's always something to negotiate. So don't take no for an answer, whether you're negotiating something, asking for something, trying to create something, leave the negativity on the side, and there will always be a path. So don't take no for an answer is a habit that I have embedded into my day-to-day life, career, both personally and professionally. And the other one I would say is creating what I call personally, I created this concept when I was actually at Salesforce of VLMs, V as in Victor, L and M, which are valuable life moments. So intentionally creating valuable life moments with your family, with your friends, with your loved ones, because many times we forget about that. We forget that we have to be intentional about creating moments in our life, in periods of time, or even just a moment during the day when it's going to be a valuable life moment for me because I'm spending time with people I care about, or because I'm reaching out to a connection I haven't talked to in many years, or because I'm just asking my daughter, how are you feeling today? Right?
Oh, I love that. VLM. I'm gonna steal that, Iliana.
Okay.
Amazing. Valuable life moments.
Totally fine.
I love it. And this one is finally my favorite. What power song would you want playing as you walked out onto stage?
Oh, I love this question, Monica, because, well, I'm a Latina, right? So,
Yes.
but I also live in the States, right? And I've been here half my life. So I'm going to have to go with two. So as a Latina, for sure, La Vida es un Carnaval from Celia Cruz. Fantastic song, very upbeat. Now, in the US, an English song would be Don't Stop by Fleetwood Mac. Don't stop believing about tomorrow, right? Yesterday's gone. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow because tomorrow is coming.
I love it. I love both of those songs. Okay, so for you, we'll have one when you're coming on stage and then walking off stage.
There you go. We can have both.
I love it. Well, Iliana, it's always a pleasure having you on, and it's always a pleasure connecting with you and reconnecting. And so before we close out, I know that there's going to be several individuals reaching out, wanting to know how to connect with you. So what is the best way for people to connect with you? And is there anything else you want to share with our audience?
Perfect. Yes, the best way to connect with me, Monica, and for the audience is LinkedIn. I'm a fanatic about LinkedIn. I do believe in the platform, right? In the networking, the power of networking. So please, LinkedIn, reach out to connect there. As far as an ask or a quote or something for the audience, maybe a couple of calls to action. One is from all these things we talked about, take just one of them and try to bring it into your career, your personal life. Hopefully you found at least one of these things useful, helpful for you, implement it tomorrow. And the second one is, if any of you need help, obviously, with the things that I mentioned, startup advising services, or you just want to connect and reach out to learn more about my experiences, I'm always happy and open to those connections too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Iliana. And I look forward to continued conversations.
Me too. Thank you again so much, Monica. And thank you to everyone who's listening.